would like to show you what we, as part of the government in Israel, did and do in the subject. Tali? I will start with some information about our service. I'm afraid it doesn't work, and I think we'll go to somebody else. Tali, it doesn't work.
Here.
Okay. As I said, I will start with some information about our services. So we gave recognition to 40 child development centers, 107 child development units, and 140 rehabilitation daycare centers. Sally? Almost half of the development centers are in hospitals and the rest in the community. These centers are located mainly in the big cities and they provide diagnosis and treatment. The units are mainly at the geographic and social peripheries of the country. They are smaller and mainly for treatment. The team at the centers and units include doctors, development psychologists, speech, occupational, physiotherapists, and social workers. The rehabilitation daycare centers are for toddlers with developmental delay from the age of 6 months to 3 years. This is before the compulsory education law in Israel that started at the age of 3. We have centers for variety type of toddlers with developmental delay, for example, CP, and different syndrome like Down. We have special centers for visual and hearing disabilities and for toddlers on the autistic spectrum. I can't hear myself. Somebody with the... Okay. We have special centers for for toddlers on the autistic spectrum. In every center, we have a kindergarten teachers and assistants, social worker for the parents and for the team, physio, occupational and speech therapist, nutritionist, and a nurse. Sally? At the last few years, we were playing with the idea of telemedicine. We looked for studies, other people's experiences, and at the beginning of this year, we wrote a very strict regulation in the subject. Tali? Then the coronavirus happened, and by the middle of March, the country was closed, and we needed to calculate our route again. We understood very quickly, Tali, that we need to have new regulation adapted to the new situation. Tali? We dealt with what to provide. And first, we allowed only to continue with ongoing treatments. Then we allowed to make parents groups, and we found it very useful. After that, we didn't have any choice, and we needed to agree for new assessments and treatments, new treatments, but not for diagnosis. We went on with group for children, and lately, even for diagnosis of ADHD for children older than 6 years old. In our strict telemedicine regulation, we demanded for the therapist some years of experience, and now we opened this service to all the therapists that work in our system. We had paid a lot of attention to safety, security, and medical recording. We need to think about, it's the slide before, we needed to think about ways of communication as we have a variety of culture and populations in Israel. Some of them don't have internet, computers, or even smartphones. Others don't agree to participate in groups meeting because of the camera. Now we come to this slide. After the first closure, we ran few surveys, and I would like to end with some results from them. Tali? In the rehabilitation daycare center, we asked about the service they had during the first closure. We asked the parents, and we got 16% of the parents giving us answers. So according to them, most of the toddlers had treatment from speech therapists, then occupational therapists, physiotherapists, and social worker. 38% from nutrition. Next, we ask what was the way of communication and the efficiency in the parents' eyes. Tali? Most of them used phone calls, then telemedicine, and then written materials and short videos. Most of the parents thought that written materials and short videos were the most effective way of communication, and only the minority thought it was telemedicine. So if I want to summarize all the information we gathered, I can say that, Tali, most of the parents in Israel are still conservative, and we will need to build the trust in telemedicine. We know now that we need more secured systems, as some of the platforms are not good enough. The therapeutic teams need, and they also ask for training, because many of them don't know how to perform treatment through the telemedicine. We know now that before we start the treatment, it is great important to coordinate the treatment type and time with the parents. Tali? And now we know that we will need to use telemedicine as a regular way of treating, mainly, but not only, in the peripheral part of the country. We know now that there is an added value to continue parents group in a Zoom as a routine. We learned that delivering online treatment to parents will continue, is very beneficial because of development parent skills, promote the toddler, and not less important, maintain a close and effective relationship between parents and the therapist. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hadal. Can we please hold questions until the end of the session? We will try to answer them, and if not, then please mail us and we will answer them by mail. Thank you. I'd like to is Ruth Palmore. She's a rehabilitation psychologist at Arlene Hospital and the head of the psychotherapy department there. I'd like to tell you one word about Arlene Hospital. There are many words to be said. I'll just say that it was established in the 1930s in Jerusalem by an orthopedic surgeon and provides services in Hebrew and Arabic. So today's talk will be on psychotherapy in pediatric rehabilitation, Zoom into telerehabilitation. Lucy?
Very much. I want to share with you some of my team's experience and insight from work in recent months. Because of the COVID pandemic, Aline's psychological team had to make a very sharp transition to provide remote psychological treatment. With very little technological experience and the fact that some of us are in the coronavirus risk group, we jumped into the challenge. At the first month, about 85% of the treatment were performed, and we also switched to online staff meetings and learning groups. Trust, closeness, and openness are very essential in therapeutic environment, and there are some conditions that can support online treatment. We must have consent to online treatment. There should be a good quality equipment like a computer and access to internet or even phone when there were a family that didn't want to use internet because of a religious attitude. Some of the psychological team asked the children, create with the children a therapy kit that conclude supplies for the therapy session, and it was helpful. Also, it's very important to pay attention to the privacy on both ends. We should also pay attention to the extent to which the transition to online psychological treatment and the consequences of the pandemic have become the main issue. For some of our patients, it wasn't the main issue, but for some, the anxieties they felt because of the lockdown and isolation and uncertainty was the main issue. We also faced ethical issues, like some occasions that we start the meeting, the conversation, and then we saw that there is another person in the room that we didn't see before, and a parent that listened to the teenager conversation. And then we started to ask at the beginning of each session if there is privacy. And what would you do if the patient starts crying in an online session and you can't help him and give him a tissue? Would you speak about very emotional things when you see that the parent is sitting with a child and just with him is sitting another patient with without, it didn't have privacy? So those questions that we have to deal with. This is a quote from Viktor Frankl, that was the establisher of logotherapy, and he said like this: everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the less of the human freedom to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Even the tragic and negative aspects of life, such as unavoidable suffering, can be turned into a human achievement by the attitude which a man adopts. I think that when we see a child or a teenager get out of bed and get dressed to meet his psychologist online, he is making a choice to promote his well-being. To speak about some of the advantages, before the pandemic, we had parent counseling for one parent who accompanied the child to Alin to get treatment. Now, because of the different setting, we saw both parents many times at evening, and it was a very big bonus because we didn't we not only saw the differences between them, we could help them to work as a team to promote their children. Many teenagers were comfortable sitting in their rooms in front of the computer. Some of them even help us to prove our communication with the computer, the online communication. Online therapy gave us a glimpse into the home environment, and it was very important because we could see the relationship in the family. Many children like to show us their rooms, show the medals that they've earned, drawings that they did. And I remember one teenager girl that when I saw her at the hospital, she didn't want to speak about her social life. And when I saw her at her very pink room with phrases on the wall about true love, it opened those issues that were very important. It was a opportunity, a new opportunity. Flexibility in treatment times allows the integration in school. This is opposed to the situation that we have now, that when children comes to Alin, he misses school. Adolescents with disabilities have experience and insight from dealing with uncertainty all of their life. And this was the opportunity to hear and learn from them how to cope with the situation. Some of the disadvantages, there were technical difficulties. We also have had to be very creative because we have some Arab speaker patient. So we have needed a translator, and sometimes the only one in the building at the hospital was a translator, and the family and the therapist were at home. We saw that young people were young children were less cooperative with online therapy. Also, brain injured children, because of their executive functioning difficulties. It also was hard to understand the speech of mechanically ventilated children. It was difficult to engage oppositional patients, patients that didn't want to go into a psychological therapy. We had to see them face to face. It was more successful. Rehabilitation is always a multidisciplinary work. And when we work from home, we couldn't see our patient and observe them at physiotherapy or occupational therapy, and to sit and discuss their difficulties with our peers on physio. And it was a point that we wanted to change. There was a problem between the balance of work and life. At the first lockdown, we worked from the sunrise to sunset and even more, because we wanted to help everybody, and we felt it was a mission. But now we have questions about till which time do we have to work? Do we have to work on our day off? Is it right to say no to a family that want to meet you nowadays at 8 o'clock at evening? I must say that also the fact that we weren't here together impaired the feeling of team cohesion. And we missed the corridor conversation between us, that we could share our difficulties, successes, and even support each other. I want to conclude and say that the challenge is hybrid therapy, and now in Aline we have a research that will help us build such a therapy. I found out what a wonderful team I have here in Aline, and also that the human spirit is able to turn an obstacle into a challenge that enriches our life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Share.
It is certainly provoking, and it's a new way. I would like to present our third speaker, Malka Stoller, a pediatric director of Telemedicine, which is a network of nurseries and preschools in Israel for babies and toddlers and preschoolers with special needs. Malka will talk about the work of the staff at Eder Mitzion on coping with an invisible challenge, shifting from the classroom to home and home. Malka?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but just one moment. Can we mute everybody in the background, because we really can't hear. There's somebody talking.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
We're trying to do that with partial success.
Hello, my name is Malka Stoller, and next to me is sitting Libby Zieg. We are the head of the Children Development Division in Ezer Mitzion. Ezer Mitzion is a nationwide non-profit and non-political organization who's provided vitally needed assistance to individuals and their families facing health challenges from toddlers to elderly. Our service has varied and including many programs and activities. One of them is our rehabilitation daycare center. We operate seven centers that include 23 classes educating 230 young children, maximum 10 young children in a class, age 8 months to 3 years old. 11 classes are designed for children who are diagnosed with ASD, 12 classes designed for young children who are diagnosed with cerebral palsy, neurological syndrome, such as Down syndrome, epilepsy, or global developmental delay, none otherwise specified. The children are enrolled to our daycare center through the Welfare and Social Service. All centers are supervised by Ministry of Social Affairs and the Ministry of Health. This is an example of the working model in a classroom. Each center has a manager like a principal at school. Each class has a multidisciplinary team, including the teacher, whose objective is to integrate all aspects of the child in the educational and interventional program together with the health professions, psychosocial professions, educational assistance, and medical support. As soon as we understood that the education system will be under quarantine, within a week, we had an outline for working and keeping a routine for children and families remotely while at home, addressing all aspects such as emotional support, educational and health profession intervention. First, we divide case management between the teacher and the social worker in each class. Then the case manager shared knowledge with parents in respect of remote therapy and learning. Each families receive a personal fit program for the child, including personal communication with health profession, teacher, and group interventions such as music therapy. The program was a weekly schedule divided into daily schedules in order to maintain a daily routine for the child and his families as best as possible at home. Later, for some families, we lended rehabilitation equipment, augmented technology from class to home, such as special standards, eye-gaze computer, and other equipment. When coordinating with extension with the parents, they were asked to define what is the best media to communicate with them. We had to take into consideration the cultural diversity among the families, such as ultra-Orthodox who do not always have internet access, or some do not have a computer at all. So flexibility and creativity were needed to maintain communication in this situation. For example, loading all information, activities modeling, intervention carryover exercise via disc on key or booklet for those without computer. Some families receive care package with toys and books via volunteers so they could engage with their child according to the personal program. Therapists sent to family modeling videos and some families sent to the team real-time videos in order to receive feedback.
מלכה, סליחה, שימי לב, המצגת ברחה לך.
Others prefer to receive intervention online by Zoom, others and a few by telephone calls and email correspondence.
מלכה, המצגת שלך ברחה.
לא, אנחנו מראים סרט.
אוקיי.
Here is a short...
Showing a film.
חבר'ה, באמת, בבקשה, לא להתערב. Here is a short video showing some activities at home by a physical therapist using houseware and many accessories. We made a point of maintaining the working routine among the professional staff and keeping our meetings as usual, at least once a week and sometimes even more frequent. and creating and setting a database of activities, information, tips, booklets, videos, and other tasks for all teams to use when needed. Despite the resilience of the organization, this was a turning point. We had to face difficult challenges from dealing with rapid change, dilemmas for the staff, how to set the boundaries with their client while working from their home, thus exposing themselves, sometimes their own family and personal phone to the families of the young children in their care. As we mentioned before, some families have difficulties using the media due to religious belief and some due to accessibility difficulties. Mission was vigilant in providing extensive service to the young children and their families, as well as to the staff, especially for those who were in isolation. We gave the team confidence and freedom for every initiative, a creative idea. An example of thinking outside the box by a teacher who used sense of humor to lower the stress for staff and families was to send them a short video clip of a well-known stand-up comedian joking about working with Zoom and wish them a happy Passover holiday. Coming back to the daycare center, most parents express satisfaction with the way the staff conduct, support, and facilitate them. The teams felt that the partnerships with parents promote children's progress during the quarantine. Seeing the children in their home environment, empowering the parents and bringing them closer to the child was eye-opening for the teams. However, we did notice some difference between the families coping, between children with ASD and children with neurological disorder. The first group need more support during the quarantine, and they were the first to send the children back to daycare after quarantine, despite the fear of infection. We hypothesized that these differences are due to the young age of the parents and the child being their firstborn, and also due to the characteristic of a child with ASD. We are currently conducting a study regarding the role of siblings in the implementation of the therapeutic goals in the home setting, especially in families with many children. Finally, we discovered the advantage of the Zoom as a useful tool, and we plan to add it in our routine work. We thank you for the opportunity to share our experience with you. Thank you.
Malcolm, thank you very, very much. And thanks to the team of Ezel Mitzion. The words Ezel Mitzion actually mean a help comes from Zion. So you can take it where you want it. Thank you, Malka, very much. And I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Zohar Filber. She's an occupational therapist from Aline Hospital, specializing in assistive technology and child passenger safety, part of Safe Kids Worldwide. Zohar is the director of a very unique center, Maayan, a display and evaluation center for adaptive technologies. And she will talk about practicing powered mobility by Zoom. Zohar, please.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning to everybody. And I'll start to talk about the experience I had practicing powered mobility via Zoom with two children with severe motor impairment that live in the Aline dormitory for children on ventilator that being taken care by their fixed staff, including 2 national service girls who service the country instead of in the army in civil organization, and the director of the dormitory took upon himself the responsibility of practicing powered mobility with the children, and took the responsibility of continuing their therapy routine. But first of all, I want to talk about the importance of powered mobility. So as we know, independent mobility is a major milestone in child's development, and babies and toddlers are exploring their surroundings by this ability. That's one way of developing their cognitive skills, their communication skills, self-esteem, and participations in many functions. In cases of severe motor impairments, there are limited opportunities to explore surroundings, and it might promote learned helplessness. That's the reason that we are at Aline believe in early intervention and early beginning of powered mobility sessions, and we have many successful cases of toddlers that gain the independence of powered mobility at the age of 18 months and even less. In many cases, ample practice is needed to become a proficient powered mobility driver, and children with severe motor impairments need the intensive practice with expert therapists in assistive technology and special equipment like special wheelchairs, special sitting systems, cushions, head supports, belts, and etc., and special access modes, and like sensitive joystick, sensitive switches, a scanner, or other modes. And in many cases, children don't get the opportunity to practice those special access modes due to lack of practitioners and special control system in their schools or therapy centers, lack of therapist time, and safety issues. That's the reason that we founded the lending program of powered mobility wheelchairs at Aline Hospital over a decade ago, which I will talk about in 2 slides. Before that, I want to divide children, powered mobility learners, into 3 major groups. The first group are exploratory learners, children that need a lot of supervision and guidance and need to practice in a very safe environment and need a lot of practice. Some of them would not become proficient drivers, but we do value the time that they experience driving in a motor wheelchair. All young children begin at this group and then become proficient drivers. The next group are operation learners. They need a little less support and supervision and can practice in more than one place. And the other group are functional learners, and they actually learn by experiencing and learn by themselves. When we founded the Power Wheelchair Lending Project, our goal was to give children the opportunity for intense practice in natural environment, physical and human and emotional. We have approximately 20 chairs with various seating systems and access control systems. And the project staff is occupational therapists that are assistive technology specialists. In the long project where children practice power mobility in the educational or the home environment, we generally make an evaluation in the course of one or several meetings. After this, we give the chair to the parent or the professional therapist to practice with the child. At an additional meeting at Aline, we assess the child's ability to and decide if it's the right time for full control and movement mobility in independence and safe manner. Occasionally, we receive videos and WhatsApp which we analyze and then advise the parent or the professional therapist using an asynchronous therapy. The COVID-19 caused me to interfere synchronically with those two children in the Beit Ham at Aline. And I saw this method had many advantages. In regular times, every child practices power mobility as part of his or her therapy sessions by need. At the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, children on ventilators at the Aline were separated from other patients and most of OTs and other therapists. And we had to change the way we work with children from working at close quarters to working from a distance. The two members of Beit Ham, our hospital's family unit for children with ventilators, and they both were at the beginning levels of power mobility training in the educational center that were separated from them. The staff in Beit Ham, the two national service girls, and the director decided to continue power mobility training with them. The supervision was given to them via Zoom therapy session after preparing a chair and the access control system for each child. In every therapy session, the child sat on the chair and the staff member connected the access mode and placed it in the right place for him. Technical problems were solved mostly during session, and we had to improvise sometimes, as you will see in a video I will show you in the next slide. This was a synchronic intervention. Okay, this is the first child that had his very first experience in power mobility for this year at his temporary room at the separated department for ventilator children. He was practicing this power mobility with a proximity switch in his left hand. And we had to improvise a hand support with diapers. As we know, this child, it was very hard in the past to gain cooperation with him in new sessions. And what we can see that in his very familiar home environment, both physical and human, he did cooperate and drove for 20-minute session at the very beginning with an unexperienced staff. The next child was more experienced. He practiced a few months before that with a chin switch, and he just continued practicing in a small room, temporary room with two girls that he knew from his Beit Ham, and he continued driving in these conditions. So I, as a therapist, was required to administer this training and to give instruction in a clear and accurate manner. this method required a total involvement of the parts of the accompanying therapist, of whom in ordinary times less responsibility and treatment is required in the first stage of the experience and practice. But we learned that young children at the beginning levels of power mobility training can practice with non-professional staff members with supervision from specialists. And we got a very strong feedback from them that this was a very strong and successful experience. And we can take away that a synchronic intervention via Zoom can be applied in our learning program supervision and can be applied right away and give another I'm sorry for the word, to our service that we are running for more than 10 years. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Zohar. Indeed, a great, great challenge. Our next speaker is Dr. Tali Ashkenazi. She's a PT and a senior BOVAS tutor. At the moment, she's the head of the European BOVAS Tutors Association, and she will talk on PT intervention for a cerebral palsy adult via the caretaker. So thank you, Tali, and thank you, Dekel, for sitting in.
Good morning to all. 1 minute, I'm just, will be ready in a glimpse. We are hosted in Dekel's room in Kibbutz Mishmar HaEmek. And as Sarah said, we are going to present together our experience from the COVID-19, how we needed to change our intervention means. Well, COVID-19 lockdown started. 1 minute, please. Okay. So when I'm saying we, I mean Dekel, that is here behind me, and you can see Dinesh and Derek, his caretakers, and Dekel wants to present himself, so but I will present him. So Dekel is 27 years old. He's an undergraduate student in Haifa University. I must say that he's an A student. All his grade is above A and above. He's very involved in the Israeli politics that is very complicated, and I must say that I learn from him all the time. A very sharp person. This is his family, very close. They all live in the kibbutz. He has 2 nephews, brother, he participated already in several marathons with his father and his brother that are marathonists. He is a performer. He had several dancing shows with one of the leading choreographs in Israel. And as Dekel says, the most important part of his life is his friends. He's very social active in all kind of social groups. And, but also, as he says, he lives with cerebral palsy, but he's not defined by it. His function level is GMFCS5, MAX5, CFCS4, and that's why I am presenting the presentation and not with Dekel talking it. His tone is dystonia. And we know each other from our PT, but we are friends for 20 years. for over 20 years. And I must say that Dekel asked that this presentation will be dedicated to our colleague of us, that because of her, we are together here for 20 years. And this is Opa Fuchsbar, that was also a senior Boba tutor and a very dear friend. So we meet for the last 15 years for once a week, face-to-face hands-on treatment. And also Dekel has a 24-hour positioning and activity. Our goal intervention for this year was powered mobility. And as you can see, he has a daily program that includes having splints and night positioning, and also movement activities that he does daily. Also standing activities without the stander and with the stander. He stands 5 to 6 times a day for 40 minutes each time. He has breathing activities in several positioning to keep his saturation in the right level. And in our all the activity, but especially when we are together in our sessions, we try that it will be as active as possible. And we succeeded till now, I must say, to avoid pain and range loss. We have seen across the years that when we stopped our intensive meetings, that means once a week, Dekel had pain and he had loss of joint ranges. What we did also is that Dekel had for a time, he had an eye-gaze communication system. And we found nowadays he doesn't use it because it wasn't that appropriate for him, but because of technology. But what we see is that we use it in our treatment, and it improved his ability to control his eyes movement and his head movement. And in a way, when we look at it nowadays, it enabled him to use a scanner and a switch in his new powered mobility system. And when I asked before making the presentation, Dekel and his caregivers about their perspective, how they perceive our face-to-face meetings, they say that it helped, Dekel said it helped him connect and be aware to his body. It challenges and activate his body differently. He needs to recruit his body and soul in our meetings. Derek, his caretaker, says that the meetings are always active, they are not passive, and that in the day-to-day, every day of Dekel's activities, he is mostly passive with his body. And then COVID-19 came. And what happened is that Dekel received his new wheelchair, powered wheelchair, just before the lockdown. I think it was 2 months before. So he just got used in sitting in his new chair that had a new headrest. And he had also new belts that he wasn't used to them before. So he had to get used to sitting in this wheelchair, and the system was also different. But he didn't get his switches and his scanner before COVID-19. He got the system only after COVID-19. So we had to keep also his abilities. And also we had in mind that we want to avoid his pain and avoid range loss. So we had 9 sessions through Zoom, and you can see here his caretaker just doing the same things that we did in the face-to-face sessions, because he always was participated in our face-to-face meetings. So you see Dekel in different positions. And here you can see after COVID-19. Dekel already succeeded using his wheelchair. So we did achieve our goal, and I say our because it's all of us. We set the goal together. So, so when I asked them to reflect about this long distance intervention, Dekel said it was an opportunity to meet and talk during the lockdown, and he felt in that situation very isolated. And Derek said that the session created and defined a fixed time for intense practice. He thought it will be harder, but because we had face-to-face sessions that we did together, it wasn't that hard. And he was prepared, he was well prepared, and he knew what to expect. But however, Dekel said it was very tense situation for him. It was very hard for him to communicate and concentrate. He needed also to listen to me and look, and the Zoom was very hard for him. Also to look, to listen, and to be attentive to all of us. And it was very hard for him to recruit himself for the meetings. And Derek said that it was appropriate for a short time and that he felt that he can't do everything. I felt that it was effective. They were an extension of my hands, and I needed to depend on them, but I was sure that they will do things as well as I did. It was very exhausted because I needed to be very concentrated and attentive. And at the end of the session, I couldn't do anything else. Our summary is that telerehabilitation emphasized the important role of the contextual factors in achieving intervention goals, especially, the personal and the environmental parts. Most important is that we have family-centered, tailored intervention in our regular situations, but especially when we're dealing on telerehabilitation, we need to plan and set the environment very carefully and to be sure that we have the available equipment in the environment. The instructions during our session need to be very clear, and we need to give a lot of time to react. It takes longer to have these sessions than the regular sessions. So we are looking to the future, and we need to have a lot of vision and to be very flexible. Thank you very much. Just stop sharing.
Thank you, Tali, very, very much. It says it all. Communication needs mobility, communication and mobility for participation. And that's one of the most important things that we try to give in our intervention. And I thank very much Dekel and Derek and the other caretaker for allowing us into their room and into their world. Very much appreciated. It is my pleasure now to allow Dr. Morit Be'eri to sum up with a very, very important take-home message from this whole period and this session. Morit, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for a fascinating hour and and this initiative of a 24-hour session that we can look around the world and find what is common to all of us in treating children with disabilities in this really strange and challenging times. I think that if there's one message that is clear for everyone is that we've been thrown into the cold water and we had to learn how to swim and swim fast. And if there is anything that I am learning from the therapists giving those sessions, it is that within this session, which is a remote session, the environment of the patient and the cultural background of the family are no less important than the tools that we are using, the practices, and the goal setting. It is pretty clear to us by now that this is a tool that could be used for ongoing interim sessions after initial goal setting within an environment that allows such communication. But there are so many challenges within the treatment of people who we have not known ahead of the session, whose tools and home environment are not quite adaptable to what we need. And there is so much more that we need to learn about this environment. I think it is imperative, and I thank you, Tali, and thank you, Dekel, for having us listen to the most important voice in this conversation, which is the voice of the person actually receiving these sessions and understanding how they view the interaction. We do not know now what will happen if and when we all go back to normalcy, to so-called normalcy. This has been an incredible opportunity of learning. What will we take with this moving forward? Will remote telerehabilitation still be a part of our daily life after this epidemic is over, after this pandemic is done with? I think there are so many challenges that it will be way too easy for all of us to go back to our comfort zone, go back to frontal one-on-one sessions, and go back to the way we did things before. But as we heard throughout the sessions, there are definitely some privileges that we have been given during this time. Understanding where the person is, their home environment, the interaction, them letting us into their home, understanding how our messages are applicable within the home setting. All these are really important take-home messages that we can take with us to move forward. I think we need more people like Dekel telling us what it feels like when you're receiving these sessions. And I think we need to leave this open platform, which is a worldwide platform of so many wise people learning from each other, and keep it as an ongoing crowdsourcing information tool that can help us all move forward. And thank you so much for the organizers. And I really hope that we will be able to discuss what this has been like in the past as soon as possible. And it's the beginning of a new year here in Israel and in the Jewish world. So Shana Tova, a happy new year to all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marit Be'eri, Director General of Helene Hospital. Thank you all. Thank you to the organizer. Thank you to Jenny, Alicia, and your team who are always at our beckon. Whenever we needed help, you were there. We thank you very, very much for keeping us apart, but close and stronger. Thank you. And a good day and a good night and a good evening to everyone, wherever you are, from us in Israel.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much for great presentations.
We're off. If you have any questions, you can send them in. If you have a comment, I don't know if we have 30 seconds or not. So
I will save the chat.
I'd like to thank my standby assistant, Tal Kaelin. Without her, I wouldn't have known how to push a button. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.